JaxPunx!
Hey, this is another episode of JaxPunx, and I'm very pleased to be able to introduce you guys to some people that are very near and dear to my heart. The first band I ever played in, we started in '88 actually, and the second show we ever played was at a club, and we were so excited. There was 3 people in the band, they were 16, there were 2 people in the band, and they were 19, and that club was the Metropolis. And Ed and Larry let us play there.
I'm Ed Wilson, and I owned or co-owned the Metropolis and Milk Bar in downtown Jacksonville from '88 through the 2000s.
Sweet. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Larry Vosmik, and I'm an Larry Vosmik, former co-owner of Metropolis and Milk Bar, downtown Jacksonville, with Ed Wilson.
Awesome.
Super happy to be able to.
Where was the
interview you guys
Metropolis?
today. Metropolis was on Monroe Street.
43 West Monroe.
Yeah.
It's the new library replaced our building on Monroe Street. You know, between Laura and Main Street, right there. And
How'd you guys get that spot?
It was formerly WP Muggs. They had closed. I don't know, maybe a year before or something. But I was looking for a place downtown. I had just gotten out of the Navy and wanted to open a music venue. So I didn't want to get a real job, and I had a little bit of money saved, and it was for rent. And I went in and struck a deal and got that space.
Yeah.
How hard was it to get the license for booze?
Nothing I've ever done before. I mean, I just jumped through the hoops, went down to the city and contacted the Division of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, said, what do I need to do to get a beer and wine license? And follow the process.
Basic adulting, huh?
yeah, they kind of help you along. And I was late to the show at Metropolis. Ed hired me as a bartender. I went in one night. Metropolis was the place that I wanted to go to. It was the fun place, right? And Ed asked me, he goes, Larry, do you know of any good bartenders? You know, and I had literally left my job at Dockside that night. And I said, yeah, Ed, I just quit Dockside. John Matthews really pissed me off. And he's like, well, do you want to work here? And I said, oh, sure. You know, and he got really excited, and the rest was kind of history. I started bartending, and then eventually, bought into the club. Ed was able to do some expansions with, my little bit of revenue that I put forward. So I wasn't there when he did the licensing for Metropolis, but later when we moved over to 128 West Adams Street for the Milk Bar, that was me doing the kind of the legwork, and that was new to me. I had been a bartender forever, but it goes occupational license first, and then your 2 COP is what it was called back then, and you had to be inspected by both the Department of Health and the fire marshal. And it was a lot of hoops to get the Milk Bar open. It wasn't easy. The fire marshal hadn't ever done anything with a basement. So he took our square footage and divided it in half by twice, and then came up with the number of people who were allowed in.
Because there's no egress.
Right.
Except for the door.
We built a back stairwell. Okay, I cut a hole through what would be the ceiling, but the ground floor, installed 2 stairwell pressurization units, installed a fire suppression system, okay, the sprinklers through the entire place. So if you guys are ever in a fire in Jacksonville, run it down to 128 West Adams, because it's the most fire-safe place in the city.
We used to put Vaseline on the top of the damn
On that
pipes.
on the pipe. Yeah.
Yeah, we had when we had the Cramps play. Lux reached up and grabbed the pipe and pulled down, and it had shit all over his hand. It went right up over the barricade and just wiped it on some kid's shirt.
They were like, "Yeah, I got grease from Lux Interior."
Yeah, that was a mini stroke of genius to put that, because
Oh God! Well, everybody was swinging.
Well, they got all dusty and dirty
Right,
too,
and
so it
full
wasn't
of
just
smoke.
Vaseline.
It
It was
was-
Vaseline and nicotine.
Oh,
and
yeah.
right, it was brown.
brown.
Oh,
goo,
yeah, I
nasty.
pulled my hand down one time.
You're tall enough to reach without
Yeah, once.
getting on your tippy toes.
That's all it took. Oh yeah, I was like, "Oh bullshit! I'm not doing that again."
I'm all geared up. I'm gonna hang from this pipe.
So when you started and you opened your doors, I remember going to the again reggae night. That was a big time.
Thursdays.
That was big. But you let punk bands play there too. Were you a fan of punk music before then, or?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay,
You know,
because I didn't know you.
I grew up in the '70s.
I knew you was a big guy.
and I mean, my next door neighbor and my best friend, he had the Clash's first album on 8-track. It was the only.
Wow.
It was the only album, only 8-track that he had that didn't click in the middle of a song because the songs were so short. I think Police and Thieves is like the longest song on
Right.
the record. The
Yeah,
rest
yes.
are all like two and a half minutes.
Right,
or something.
90
yeah.
seconds, 2 minutes.
You know,
Yeah.
and,
So it wouldn't switch over like they did.
it wouldn't click, and then
Yeah.
they fade out, and then they click, and then start back up. But Sex Pistols, Public Image Limited, Buzzcocks, always a New York Dolls fan from way back when.
Rest in peace, Buster.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw him in New York a few years ago, probably 10 years ago, and my friend Rochelle and her boyfriend at the time, Mike. Last minute, I was up visiting, and they're like, "Hey, you want to go see David Johansen tonight?" I'm like, "Duh!"
Yeah.
So we go into this old theater, and we were escorted to a booth on the side of the stage. And the guy, our host, was this very well-dressed young Russian man who, very charming. He had rotten teeth. Very well dressed. But but we sat and listened to David Johansen, accompanied by an acoustic guitar player, sing all his hits, like 20 feet away in this giant theater, and we're eating sushi and drinking wine the whole show.
Nice.
So it was
That's
one of my
Wow.
best shows I've ever seen. Just the whole evening was amazing.
That's cool.
It was just last minute, and
Makes me
Michael
smile.
owns a beauty bar up there, and he's just got great connections. It's just last minute. Hey,
Yeah, that's a good spot.
So the punk rock, and I mean even to some degree new wave. I lived up in New Jersey. I went to high school in New Jersey. I'm from Jacksonville. I'm a Floridian at heart. I had enough of a Southern accent that when I moved up there, people would say, "Yo, say something, Larry."
Yeah.
What do you want me to say? You sound so stupid when you talk. I'm like, "Oh, okay." But
You sound so smart.
it was for me, just disco was ubiquitous. Okay, it was, you couldn't escape it. You're watching the Super Bowl. You're just, and I think it's WRUF or the Rutgers University radio station was where I heard. Plus, we had WNEW in New York City, played some good music. But when I discovered the college radio station, it's heard the Ramones and the Clash and all these fantastic bands, and I worked in restaurant. So I worked with a woman who dated the lead singer from a band called the Bongos. We started going into the city to see shows. I worked with Mary Ann Jones, who was married to David Jones from Agnostic Front, so I saw Agnostic Front before they were Agnostic Front. You know what I mean? It was just it was after hours club.
Before
New
Roger
York.
Merritt?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this would have been 83, I guess. You know,
He was
82. And, but I mean, I just went with Marianne and David, you know, and went to the shows. And that was back when, you know, the punks were pogoing, you know, doing, 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 doing.
Yeah.
And so for, you know, for me, it was new. It wasn't, you know, the WPLJ, what's now classic rock. It wasn't Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, all of those, you know, bands that I had heard my entire life.
Yeah.
It was brand new. And, you know, I kind of got twisted after seeing David's band. And then I saw the Ramones, and that was it, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, don't get me started on the Clash. You know, it's just, I'm sorry I didn't go to, they opened for, who was it? For The Who. And had an opportunity to go to that show and didn't do it, you know, in high school. So
Yeah, I've made a few mistakes out there.
yeah,
So.
yeah.
I'm curious, what was the first punk band to play at Metropolis?
I don't know, probably you guys.
That would be a hell of an honor.
You know, the Creeps played there early.
Yeah.
You know, for, you know, all the
Plain
local
Cruise.
bands.
Yeah,
Plain Cruise.
Tommy's bands.
Tommy's Berlin's Big Head locally. Stevie Stiletto.
Yeah, Ray was playing back.
We did like the metal version of TSOL. That was like the first national act with Joe Wood.
Okay.
Geez, who else played there, Larry?
I'm trying to think, but I mean, a lot of our punk shows were local, you know, just
The
local
Doldrums
artists.
from Gainesville were a great band. They played there very early, probably the first month they were open.
Did we do the Mentors at?
No, not at Metropolis.
No, that was
That place
at
was,
Milk Bar.
it was really cool because it was small.
Yeah.
It was. I said it before. It was the place I liked. You know,
Yeah.
Milk
It
Bar
was cozy.
Milk Bar would have been a place that I would go to see a show.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Day
Metropolis.
to day hanging out.
Yeah, Metropolis had a good feel.
Had a good feel.
Yeah.
And we had the happy hour thing going on, and then there was that. You know, we'd have all the ironworkers and business people in there at the same time, which was a fun contrast. And then weird people wandering in off the street.
Yeah.
We had a lot of, you know, when people would get out of Rayford, they come in on the bus.
Oh, no shit.
And they go, hey, where's the nearest bar? I've been locked up for
It was
25
us.
years. They go, right down there, Metropolis. So we get these guys in there on a regular basis, and they'd be like
Spending their $20.
spending their $20. They'd be showing their prison IDs.
Their
Look at this.
Red cards.
Look at this, Larry. Is this the face of a killer or what? You
Yeah.
know?
Like, look, I'm old enough to drink.
Yeah, he pretty much looks like a murderer to me. Yeah, guilty as fuck. You know?
I want to bring this up. You know, Ed had the bar completely open by the time I, you know, ever set foot in it.
Yeah.
And he and Miley and Eddie, who were there before I was there, the way that they had outfitted the club, a stroke of genius. He took guttering and then put incandescent lights or fluorescent tubes in the gutters. Okay, so it was like this nonstop sconce that went all the way around the bar, and then on top of that, he took lighting gel scraps, and just sprinkled them in. And so when you walked in, the feel was just, you know, the color was muted, and, you know, purpley green and red, and it was just brilliant, you know. And the first time I walked in, I was like, oh, cool, finally.
There's
You
no
know?
ferns.
Yeah,
It
no,
was the-
no ferns at all.
It was the first bar I think I ever went into.
Did you ever get scared by the mannequins?
Larry did.
You did too, man. So this is Ed and I are closing up right after hours.
Yeah, I can figure it.
And I mean, you're just walking around and you don't expect it's. There are two people. You can see one of them or hear one of them, and
I'd move
the
them
other
around
room.
too all the time.
And you walk past it. Jesus Christ! And I'd hear from the back. I'd hear Ed go, "Woo!" And
I'd put him in the bathroom. After we're closed, I'd take one and put him in the bathroom because I know Larry's going to go to the bathroom.
Oh,
before
yeah.
we leave.
The door, Florida
Stand
law.
right in front of the door. Wow.
Florida law makes it so that you either have to have two doors going into a bathroom or some kind of mechanism that obscures view to the toilets,
Yes.
right? So the men's room, there was a door, and then looked like an old ice machine, or maybe it was a air handler,
Yeah.
right?
Air
And there's
handler.
another door. And so Ed put one of the mannequins after the first door, right? So here I am, I'm cleaning up the bar and I got to go pee because I'm drinking 90,000 beers. Walk in and it scares the crap out of me. Walking in, go in do my business, open the door to the bathroom, and twice. Every single time I went to the bathroom, I'd be coming back out and go, Jesus
Did
Christ.
it again? The
Right?
same one?
But the only reason I didn't move it is I'd be behind the bar and I'd hear "Ah!" from our customers. and
It was worth it.
it lost its head. Somebody had punched the head off, and our mannequins kind of lost body parts over time. I think one made it to the milk bar. Or
Yeah, somebody
milk
was
bar.
throwing them out, and there was like 10 of them, and I went and collected
Yep.
all of them. I'm like, I can use these.
This is going to be
the
What
great.
we
luggage,
can
the
do with
luggage
these.
shop or one of the businesses that
Yeah.
closed. Yeah.
That's awesome. So who were some of the people that you really like to see come to the shows when you would be running the door or whatever and coming to your club? Who were the fun ones?
I always liked Richard, who always wore like a bolo tie or a tie. Very quiet, very very cool. He went to
The
all
lawyer?
the shows.
And a
I
fez.
don't know if he was a
attorney?
lawyer. He kind of had longer hair, but always dressed really well.
Who was
very quiet.
Eugene.
Eugene.
Eugene was another, and Eugene was a man who came to Metropolis and then followed us over to Milk Bar. He's kind of one of the original customers. He's the one who got locked into the Milk Bar one day, right?
Ah,
He fell
Locked in it? Oh,
He fell
Fell
asleep.
asleep on the pool table.
Yep, fell asleep
And
on
we
a pool
forgot
table.
about him.
Turned the lights off, and the next day we come in and
We
there's-
got a call. He knew
That's-
he knew
oh,
somebody's
that's-
number.
okay.
Somebody called us and said, "Yeah, Eugene's locked in the bar." And I went down there like 11 o'clock in the morning and let him out.
oh shit!
He
Man, I
was-
gotta go to work,
he
man.
was embarrassed.
He was
so
smart though,
embarrassed.
because we had the fire door at the bottom of the stairs. He's like, "Ed, the only thing that saved me is that I propped that door open and then went up and checked to see if I could get out the front door, because if I would have just went out, he
he'd
would
have
have been
been
trapped
stuck.
in the stairwell."
Oh
Yeah.
no shit!
Yeah.
That would have been fucked up.
Oh yeah.
I remember we used to go above all the floors that were above the milk bar,
Oh yeah.
and we go up on. It seems like we went up on the roof too.
Oh yeah,
We could get
the
up on the roof.
freight elevator would take you up to the roof, and
You could go one floor above,
Right.
and no one ever looked up. Nobody on the sidewalk would ever look up.
Yeah.
You could be talking, you
Yep.
could yell, you could do anything, and they would never look up. They would never go, "What's that sound?" and look up.
Yeah.
It was incredible, man. We tested it over and over again. They were like, "You could just do
the
anything."
only,
up
the
here."
only guys that looked up were the cops, and that was when you threw things at them. God damn it!
Yeah, we
Larry,
didn't
you
throw
want to go to
anything.
jail?
Yeah.
Jeff saying that as I chucking cherries on them.
Just underwear.
Right, exactly. Here, give me a minute. I'll give you something. Hang on, Jeff. Look up now. Yeah.
So how often would you guys have a show during your prime? Was it twice a week or once a month? What?
Like 4 or 5 days a week. You know. We'd have like 2 club nights, and then the rest was live music.
What
So.
were some of the favorite bands that you had that you booked?
Oh wow.
Concrete Blonde at
Concrete Blonde,
Metropolis was
every
just a
time they
really,
played.
really good show.
Every time they play, I don't know what it is about Johnette, but
Yeah.
when she sings, she squeezed some tears out of me. I've
Yeah.
got this very weird reaction when I hear her sing. She made me cry. And yeah, they were always amazing. I always liked all the classic bands, and Fear, the Buzzcocks. Tricky was a great show.
The Cows.
The Cows were my favorite live band of the '90s,
Yeah.
for sure. Loved them. They were like a punk band, but weren't really. They were punk on some songs, and then they did that slow thing, but very theatrical. And
I love it.
Shannon Selberg is one of the greatest poets of his time. And just an incredible performer, stage presence, did weird shit. Like he'd come out and he'd face the stage, and then or face the drummer, and he'd strip down naked, be completely naked, and then he'd be like standing in the X position, for the song, and then at some point he would pivot and just turn around. He'd have like a baby head covering up his junk with the eyes that move, up and down.
Hell yeah.
And I had this distinct image of these kids in the very front of him, like leaning it into their face, and they are leaning back in horror, and he's
Stuck.
going
behind them, they're
because
stuck.
behind
Oh,
them,
man.
and he's leaning into it, and it's just the funniest thing ever.
Oh, I bet that's an awesome pick.
Red Cross was one of my.
Red Cross,
I only-
absolutely.
I was there, I think, for one show. I don't know if they ever came back, but Red Cross was a great show, and it's kind of a tough question because, like when the Buzzcocks played, I took the night off. I was right up front, and me and Pete Shelley were singing the songs together. He noticed me with knowing all the words to the songs.
There's a great video on YouTube from that concert too.
Yeah, and so you had, those personal favorites, and then you had Guar, and every time we did Guar, it was so much fun. Everybody. You wouldn't see it in every show where everybody smiled after the show. When Guar ended and everybody was covered in blood and atomic snot and whatever, they were happy.
Yeah.
They were absolutely happy. I enjoyed the Guar show, not so much for the music as much as everybody
show.
enjoyed it.
The British bands, all the great British punk bands and
The
stuff.
Damned.
Yeah, and Gang of Four and Buzzcocks and even the Exploited and all these bands, and the hip hop acts tended to be, those guys came in early and hung out all day with us, and we got to know them pretty well. At least they were our best friends for a day.
Yeah.
And it was very consistent. And all the British bands, when they come in, it was classic. They come in at noon, and they see the beer taps and the harps and Guinness. They'd be like, "Hey, can we have a beer?" And then there was that pressure of, "Are you going to drink with us?" And I could not, because I can't drink during the day. I'll fall asleep.
Yeah.
When I start drinking, I'm going to sleep in 4 hours. Doesn't mean whether I have one beer.
I
or
drank
not.
with them.
It's
For
impressive.
But yeah, they come in and start drinking all day, and then play the show, and perfect. And I remember Jason Lewis and I talking after the Buzzcock show, and it was like they were so tight and so flawless, and the vocals were so perfect that it sounded exactly like the record. Like you were like, are those guys really playing?
Lip syncing or what?
Because it was so flawless. Out of all the bands we played, they were just like amazingly.
Putting the needle down.
It was like putting the needle down on the record, And a lot of bands do different twists of different songs, but they were like a machine, like one song after another. It was.
And they're a
amazing.
lively band. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
It's. I don't know. It's not classic punk.
A lot of fast songs.
Yeah, but they're all super, super fast, and boy, that was, I took one off the bucket list on that show.
I saw a show with the dwarves. They had hagfish open up.
Yep.
The hagfish was freaking awesome. I've never seen anybody play drums like that guy. I mean, he was flipping in
Is
between.
that the one that Sublime opened
Yeah.
for him? Yeah.
You know, they may have.
But Sublime was on at like
They might not have been on the bill. But
7
yeah, they
o'clock.
played.
They played early.
Somebody jumped. The
Oh, yeah.
drummer from
That's
from
Yes.
the dwarves jumped out and sat on some girl's head.
Landed on her head and knocked her out. Yeah.
It only knocked her out.
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering if it broke her neck. I didn't know.
But no, we had
They
to call.
brought
They
the
brought down
EMTs.
the EMTs and they
Okay.
carried her out.
And that's when Brad from Sublime, they were carting her up the back stairwell, and Brad runs up to her and yells, "The dwarves rule!" Okay, in her face, and she started crying. And that's when I grabbed Brad and kind of opened the door. And Big Sergeant Leaptrot, I'll never forget this. He's got hands that are like this big. This is one of the police officers that we paid.
Yeah.
Put his hand on my shoulder, and he's an honest 6'4", and he said, "Son, you can't beat up the band." And he had the little twitch that I had seen when before he pulled the mag light out.
Yes.
And I went, "Oh fuck!" And so I let go of Brad, and he scampered up. And then what happened?
Well, before that,
That was a crazy night.
Brad started calling the bar to book a show, and I'd never heard of his band, and he'd call every day, and we at that time usually we can find a spot for somebody, but we were booked solid. We were doing like 5 shows a week, and we didn't really have anything. And he would call. He sent us a big box of records, and we got to know him. He was just charming and super funny.
Yeah.
Put him on speakerphone. Hey Ed, hey Larry, what's up?
Right.
So finally one day he's like, "Look, we've got a couple shows booked in Florida. We are going to be at your bar the night that the Dwarves play. We played shows with them in LA and San Diego and wherever. We know those guys."
Yeah.
He's like, "Can we please open the show? You don't have to pay us any money at all. If we can get a little water and maybe even some beer, that'd be great. You don't have to pay us." And he's like, "If things turn out really well and you want to give us gas money, that's great. If not, we're still happy to be there. Can we get on the bill?" I'm like, "Come on, so
Yeah.
let's do it."
How could you turn him
So yeah, he
So-
was super charming, super funny. We got to know him on the phone, and he showed up. Everything was great. He showed up with the dog. So that thing happened with Larry.
They played,
So
and then he
I've
went
been-
and had free beer for the rest of
Yeah.
the shows.
So I'm in
right?
the office, and Brad. I knew I was out there when it happened, and he popped his head in and goes, "Hey Ed, Larry wants to kill me." He's like, "What am I gonna do?" I'm like, "Dad, just go away, go hide somewhere, and come back in a half an hour. Larry will cool down. Everything's fine." So Larry came back to the office all pissed off, and you calmed down by then.
Right, and his brother was talking to
And
you.
you were laughing.
drummer.
You were laughing about it, kind of
Right.
when we were in the office afterwards, and told me the Joe Leaptrot story. And then so Brad finally came in and popped his head in, and he like looks at Larry and smiles real big, and goes, "Sorry, Larry." And Larry's nice. He's like, "It's okay, man. It's all good.
And
Don't worry about
it was one of those. It was in the summertime, and it was an off night. Let's say a Tuesday or something that we did the show, and what happened? Sublime got on, and they were good.
They were really good.
I mean, they
yeah.
were tight.
Yeah,
they
they
were
were good.
ripping, right? And then the rest of the bands went on, and by the time the Dwarves got on, we had, I don't know, we probably had 100 paid that night,
It was a pretty decent night.
but
It seemed pretty bad.
in that environment, by the end of the night, when he did the stage dive, the floor there weren't bodies, there were gaps everywhere, and the girl who ended up getting hit, she had back issues, back
no
surgery,
shit.
and so she literally couldn't get out of the way, right, and got just creamed.
I saw it.
And so when Brad did
I
that,
thought he killed her, man.
yeah,
Like,
it was
broke her neck.
it was horrifying.
Yeah, he
and
totally landed on her head.
and then Brad doing the dwarves rule. I saw white.
Oh, I
You
bet.
know?
Yeah, yeah, because you were scared for her.
And
I can only imagine,
And
yeah.
I'd never seen anybody, their head immobilized with the styrofoam
I
and the
know.
straps. That was relatively new, and
That freaked me out.
That was not fun.
Yeah.
The next time they came in, Brad was like, Larry, is there any stage diving tonight?
Oh, he's really not letting it go, is he?
But he like Ed said, he was nice and funny, and it just made me laugh. And I'm like, dude, it was a $5 show the second time they played, and I don't know, 800 people in Jacksonville saw Sublime for $5, and it was $5. I got a poster somewhere.
Oh my God.
Yep, and it was one of the great shows, and I think that was one that they were breaking in California.
They were in a bunch of surf movie soundtracks.
Is that-
so? That's kind of what broke them. And then, Sunrise Surf Shop helped promote the show and brought out all the people from the beach.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then you had L.A. or what is it? Long Beach Dub All Stars. I think they played there.
Yeah.
Years later.
Yeah.
Once he'd already passed. So, a lot of us haven't made it this far down the road. What's a good story of someone that is not here anymore? They're not going to be able to share their story, and you got a story about them.
I got a good one. So, we had Dee Dee Ramone play,
Okay.
and great show. He came back and hung out in the office, and great guy, and just
Super nice guy.
Super nice guy. So Dee Dee and I kind of hit it off, and after the show, he came back and we started palling around. So we're running around. I was drinking. I can't remember if he was drinking or not. I was definitely drinking, but we just hit it off. Had a great time and talked for a couple hours. And the end of the night, Larry and I are back finishing up paperwork, and Larry's like you can tell he's mad. It's like grumpy. Like, Larry, what's wrong? And he's like, I'm like, dude, what's wrong? He's like, God damn it, Ed. I grew up listening to the Ramones. I've seen them like 9 times at CBGB's. No, first thing he said, Ed, was Dee Dee hitting on you? And of course,
Hitting on me, damn it.
God damn it!
of course, I'm like, well, maybe. He's like, God damn it, Ed. I'm like, what? Are you mad that he wasn't hitting on you? And he's like, that reminds me of my favorite band.
So what's your
Well, here's the thing.
Still jealous.
The thing
Rub
about
his nose in it. Now let's hear yours.
The thing about Dee Dee that it was so shocking for me, because I'm talking to him, right, and it didn't happen often where my fan eye, right, and I'm like, yeah, man, for years I've been trying to figure out the words to Warthog. What are the words? And he goes, well, man, and I'm like, what? And he talked. It reminds me of the Muppet in the band, the girl with the blonde hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
The hippie.
Yes, the hippie. And he's like, well, man, there aren't really any words to that. It's just blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, bullshit.
ABC.
and
You got a friend that talks the same way.
and I was just, but
He laughed. He was laughing. You were asking it. He wouldn't give you an answer.
he wasn't.
Laughed.
Yeah, and
He was just being.
whatever. I still was hanging out with Dee Dee.
The words
so-
aren't important enough for me to tell you. Was
No,
the vibe.
and but I will never forget that voice, and it reminds me of Jim Carroll.
Yeah.
And he plays the junkie in the Basketball Diaries at the very, very end,
Yeah.
and he talks the same way.
Yeah.
And it's almost hippie, right? And it's just way different than you would expect. This is the punk. This is man. Like, oh,
We have a
jeez.
friend from New York, and she's a Cuban girl,
Mhm.
and she has that same accent. I wonder if maybe they're from the same borough or something.
Forest Hills.
Yeah, you know, or it could be the time, you know, and
She's not as old as I am.
so I don't. As far as bands go, nothing really pops to mind. But
Ice-T
just
Body
people.
Count when they would play Moose Man from Body Count. They came in early. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning. They wanted to come in early for load in, and he had some press to do. And Moose Man, who played with Iggy Pop later on, he came back to the office. It's like, Ed and Larry, I've heard about you guys. I'm hanging out with you all day. You're my new best friend. So he hung out with us in the office for hours, just shooting the shit. And but he ended up, it was really sad. He got shot out on the street somewhere in LA, just a drive-by shooting, and passed away. I think late 90s, early 2000s. And he was such a good guy.
is it Plug 2 also, or one of
He
the
just
plugs?
passed away. Yeah,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
When we
From
did
De La
De La
Soul.
Soul, Ed mentioned we had a lot of people coming from jail, you know, from Rayford, right? And this dude was all pissed off because he had to pay a cover charge to get inside. We opened the door, we let him come in for a little bit, and then kicked him out while the band was doing their sound check, and then let him back in, right? We were being what I thought was being really nice, you know, and all he wanted to do was drink. Well, he had enough money to get drunk, and by the time the band was on, he was up at the stage, and he started spinning on the band. And these guys are, you know, they're Strong Island, and first goes the wireless mic, and
He ducked,
it hit a girl,
knocked her
Right.
out.
Shit.
she goes down, all three of them jump off stage, and they caught him at the front door. And I remember hopping over the bar, and you were right at the doorway, and the band came back down and then left, right? And the way Ed described it, and it's exactly how I remember it, was I couldn't see anything, but all I could hear was
Oh, they beat the crap out
they
of him.
beat the dog shit out of him. And
And we got in there and we
They
pulled
knew
them
how to
all
give
off.
it, huh?
We pulled them all off, but there was some tension with the crowd. They thought that
It
we
was-
were on the band, and we were like, no, we were just breaking it up.
it was
you know?
a very mixed crowd.
But we
and,
were cool with those guys. They were great.
Yeah.
You know?
And then Bolhuni Mindset, right? Isn't that the name of the song?
Yeah, they wrote a song about that incident.
About that incident. Yeah. You know,
What's it called?
Bolhuni Mindset. Yeah, it's the album that came after their real big one that had, you know, Jennifer
3 Feet High
Jenny.
is Rising.
Yeah, three
Yeah.
feet high and rising. And but what I remember about those guys, and Ed's absolutely right. Any of the hip hop guys, you know, for the most part, were they're aces, and they were on the job.
Public Enemy were great.
Oh.
And
Yo, Sinead!
yeah.
I had shaved my head, okay, and I had gone down to pick the band up, or so I thought. And I walk into the bar, and I'm looking for a Flavor Flav,
In the hotel.
right at the
Looking
Look
hotel,
for a big clock.
right? Exactly, and there's piano music playing, and then I hear, "Yo, what do I have to do to get another margarita?" And I look, and there's Flavor Flav with his dreads, right? No clock, no grill. And I'm like, oh, okay, hey, I'm here to pick you up, right? And he's like, all right, you need to go to the bus. And I take him to the bus, and I'm expecting the whole band to come out, and then Flavor Flav comes back out with a bag of Doritos and gets back in the van. And he said, take me back to the bar. And I went, what? I said, you called me to pick up your Doritos? And he goes, and I dropped him off at the bar and went back to the club. And then they really called for sound check and all. And I'm like, I'm not going back over there. Fuck those guys.
Yeah.
Right. And
Dicks.
so Flavor Flav is on stage, doing the sound check, and he goes, yo, Sinead, you got my Doritos? I'm like, fuck you, man. I had a shaved head, You know, oh my God. You know,
He was fucking rousting your ass.
he was giving me a hard time.
We did the first time we did them. We did a show with them in Tallahassee, and I went to meet them in a parking lot to drive them to have them follow me to the venue. And Norm, Terminator X, who kind of talks like Mike Tyson,
Okay.
but he's a big dude.
Oh, yeah.
But he's like, I had a '72 Buick Skylark convertible, and he liked my car, and he's like, hey, can I drive your car? And I'm like, do you have a driver's license? Because I know fucking New Yorkers, you know. And friggin' Chuck and Flav and Brother Mike and the whole crew just dying. They thought that was the funniest thing they'd ever seen.
Because they didn't.
He did have a license. And he's like, yeah, I have one. I'm like, well, can you show me your driver's license?
Let's see it.
He pulled it out, showed it, and I'm like, yeah, man. So
Okay.
I let him drive my car, and but yeah, those guys were great. They're really nice.
He never let me drive the car.
I got to go. Oh hell no! But I got to go.
72 Skylark, man.
Eric Sadler from the Bomb Squad lives here in Atlantic Beach, and we got to be friends. And I got to go have dinner with Chuck. And Chuck was visiting Eric one night, and that was funny because we started talking about the shows at the Milk Bar, and he's like, "Do you remember the Milk Bar?" You know, Eric's like, you know, and Ed, he's like, of course I remember Ed. He's like, the Milk Bar was the CBGBs of the South. He's like, we played there a couple of times. Everybody played there. That place was amazing. And so we start talking about when they first time they played there. One of the guys from Leaders of the New School went to walk backstage, and he didn't have a laminate. And Jason Barzak, who worked for us for a few years, tried to stop him from coming back. There was an altercation, little fight that happened, and fists were thrown. It was between security and Leaders of the New School with big Busta Rhymes, and one of the Nation of Islam guys, little guy with the bow tie, comes downstairs, and I mean the place is packed, and you hear his booming voice, "Hey! It is over! Get on the bus!" And all those guys on Leader of the New School, eyes got this big, they stopped what they were doing and trotted up the stairs and got on the bus. And that was the end of that fracas. But I told that story, and Chuck was like, wow. He's like, out of all the stories over all the years, that is one of the stories that our band has told over and over and over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's ours too. And they're, you know.
Sounds like a pretty big one. Anybody, a little, you know, one dude could stop all that in a big crowded room, and everybody just go, oh, okay,
And
we got you.
It was so weird how the Nation of it wasn't weird. The Nation of Islam approached us and said, we understand that Public Enemy's playing. And yes, that's true. Well, we would like to provide security. And, you know, Ed's like, well, we already have security. And he said, no, we don't want to charge anything. You know, we will do it for free.
Right.
You know, and if you know Ed, that is the right price.
Yes.
Right? And, so, but that's how they came in. Now, they dealt with the band exclusively. We did, you know, entry and such. And when that went down from where I was standing, which is behind the bar, what I remember is Big Larry, the garbage man.
Yep.
Who, giant man, carrying Jason Barzak, okay, like this.
Like a
walking,
rag doll.
And Jason's arms are hanging down, right? His hair, he had long blonde hair, his hair is hanging down, and he's walking straight at the bar. I open the door, and Larry lays him down on the floor, right?
Back in the kitchen.
Yeah, and I'm like, what happened? And he goes, there was some fight and what? And so we had this great big Z medical kit, and thought it was a good opportunity to use the ammonia inhalants
smelling salt.
on one of your friends, right? I mean, because
Smelling
why
salts.
wouldn't you? Yes.
Yeah.
And I broke one under his nose, right? And
Yeah, those things work great.
they do.
Oh, yeah,
They
wake you
are,
right on up.
they're the real deal.
Unless you're dead.
And Jason, you know, sits up, and I said, "What the hell happened, Jason?" He goes, "Well, one of those guys from the band, he didn't have a, lanyard," and I said, "Okay," and he goes, "So I bear hugged him," and I went, "You did what?" And he goes, "Yeah," and he goes, "I don't think that was a good idea," because the last thing I remember seeing is Reebok, because they were stomping them. And I said, "Oh my God, Jason, you dumbass."
I think that was the last night he worked too. He
It was
quit
pretty
after that.
It was pretty soon
It
after
scared
that.
him.
Did you guys ever have Hank? Remember Big Hank with a mohawk? He was
Yeah.
like 7'7".
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What happened to him?
I don't know.
Speaking of which, kind of getting back to the question, and Hank passed away a couple years ago, and Big Hank helped us out, especially at Metropolis. He wasn't a big fan of the Milk Bar, but he would come in after work. He was an iron worker or a welder, and that poor guy, being inside a ship in the summertime, cutting steel, and he'd hang out at the bar. But whenever we had any big problems, Hank was always around at Metropolis, and he was a good guy.
He was at the first show I ever went to.
Yep, you can't miss him. I mean, and he was a gentle giant. Under 6 beers, gentle giant.
What about Moose?
Oh yeah, Moose.
Moose passed away a few
Moose
years
passed
ago.
away as well. Yeah, Moose. Oh my gosh. You remember the tracts that you used to find downtown? Those little books, those Christian books that
Oh, yeah.
would tell a story,
Oh, yeah.
and some horrible fate would happen.
You
if
end
you
up
did,
in a lake of fire.
right, and,
Yeah.
and so it's me, Ed, and Moose, and it was early in the morning. Okay, we'd been drinking, a little bit, and Moose is reading this track, and he's like, "Give me the phone." Moose calls the number, and you hear, "Yeah, you said Jesus will give me anything I want, right?" And he goes, "Oh, no, I'm reading this thing right here." He goes, "I want a hooker and 2 large pizzas," right? And we're like, and he's like, no, I'm reading right here. It says Jesus will give me anything I want. And I'm like, oh my God, Moose. Moose was a good guy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Moose.
Well, he was like a double XL, but he would wear medium shirts.
Oh my God.
So
yeah.
they'd be above his belly button at all
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
With his big old belly.
I don't know. I get it now. I didn't when I was skinny.
It shows off my phone.
We had one night, this young couple came in and they had gotten robbed at gunpoint and down by the Wendy's, by the drive-thru. And I'm like, well, did he have, what kind of gun did he have? And they're like, well, we never saw a gun because he had it under his shirt.
Okay.
So we're like, yeah. So Moose and I went for a walk and walked down there, and there was a guy in the alley, in the drive-thru at Wendy's, right there on Main Street. He's like, "Give me all your money." And
Show me your shirt.
I'm like,
Exactly.
I'm like, well, why would we do that? He's like, "I got a gun, I'll shoot you." I'm like, well, can you show us your gun? And there's me with Moose behind me.
Yeah.
And the guy looks at us and he takes off running.
Yeah.
So
He's
he
like,
takes
oh
off
shit.
running. So we're chasing him. I'm chasing him first. Moose is behind me. So ran across Main Street, about 2 parking lots up, about 3 blocks away finally. Moose kept up pretty good. He was back a little ways. But I finally caught up with the guy. He's a big, tall guy. And I grabbed his arm, his left arm, and slammed on the brakes. So he pendulum around, and when he pendulum around, Moose came up and did the big John Wayne punch
The
And-
roundhouse.
and knocks him out cold. So we've got him by the arms. He woke back up and he's kind of hobbling, walking, halfway dragging him. We're dragging him back to the bar. Gonna
See if
call.
it was him, yeah.
No cell phones. So we got across one street, and these brothers rolled up in their car, and they're like, "Hey, what the hell's going on here? Where are you going with him?" And they're like, "Oh, armed robbery. We're calling the police." He's like, "You guys can call the cops if you want." They're like, "Okay, cool." So yeah, we brought them back to the front of the bar,
Yeah.
and
So it was him.
Oh yeah, that
yeah.
was the guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back
It's
then,
kind of hard to have two people doing the same.
So you're like crime fighters downtown.
there was nothing down there. You know, I mean, no one was
Oh, yeah.
open. It was, you know, downtown Jacksonville, and
Especially at night.
in 88, 89, you know, virtually all the businesses had gone out, you know, and Hemming Plaza. And, you know, when we opened and it got dark, it was just our customers, you know, and the occasional, you know, not nice person, you know, and so they were pretty easy to find, you know. It wasn't,
We had this guy, Wayne the window washer, who would ride around on his bicycle. He had this, you know,
Okay.
and he would clean your windows without asking and then demand money.
Mhm.
So,
With a newspaper, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So one day, Jeff Stennett, our old sound guy at Metropolis, came in and was like, "Did you guys know that Wayne, the window washer, has a car?" And I'm like, "Jeff, Wayne doesn't have a car." "No, he has a car. I saw it." I'm like, "Wayne, the window washer, has a bicycle and a squeegee
sometimes a
and a
bucket.
crack habit." That's what he's got. He doesn't have a car. He's like, "Well, Wayne took my van. We went in the van and we went to his car. And his car was broken down, but he needed money to repair his car. So we had to go get cinder blocks, and we put them under this car and used my jack to jack the car, put cinder blocks on it, and we took the tires off, and he sold the tires to go get money to fix his car."
And you helped him do it?
Ah!
Oh,
And
no.
I'm like, "Did he have keys to his car?" He's like, "No, the keys were at his mom's house." I'm like, "Jeff, you just stole 4 tires, and
Damn it.
Wayne didn't even give you any money, did he?"
Oh man.
And he was like, "No." I'm like, "Yeah, oh yeah, you stole
Where's
someone's,
this guy from?
you stole someone's tires, Jeff. You're his
I
accomplice."
love Jeff to death. I mean, he's a genuinely
Is he
good
from,
human.
is he from here?
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah,
shit.
But that streak of naivete that goes through him, you know, yeah, that's my car right over there. You see that one? You know, and it's like,
Help me get these tires off.
yeah.
Sure.
I'm gonna sell these tires to fix my car.
Yeah, the car with no tires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Wow, what a damn, oh my God.
remember the naked guy
Which one?
Ah!
on Main Street, standing on the flower pot, naked as a jaybird, and
There were
we had
several
the
naked people.
had the brick, and I think it was you. You called you're like, yeah, there's a man standing naked.
Oh, well, that,
Or am I confusing two
yeah,
stories?
you're confusing the 2 stories. I had a guy, I was driving to pick, I think, Andy P.I. up from the airport. I'm going over the Fuller Warren Bridge, and standing in the median right by Baptist Hospital. This is rush hour, so it's packed traffic in both lanes. That little lane, it's not even a breakdown lane, it's about 3 feet wide. There was a man standing naked, and I called 911. I said, you know, she's like, well, 911. I'm like, yes, man, I'm crossing the Main Street Bridge, heading westbound or northbound on 95, right by the Baptist Hospital. I'm in the northbound lane, and there is a naked man masturbating an erect penis in the lane there by the median. She said, "Say what?" It was crazy because the dude was fully hard, and when I drove past him in the left-hand lane, he made eye contact with me.
Oh, shit.
You know? But
This is for you.
But I was just thinking, like, if I was in that position where he was, naked or without clothes or whatever, how is he maintaining his erection? And
Yeah,
I would be
distracted.
I would be in a panic, like I would lose it immediately.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to get out of here without dying? Because there's nowhere for him to go.
This
And
is
he would
before Viagra.
Just, he would just stand
Yeah,
there jacking
yeah.
as hard as he could.
I think I know the little patch of ground right there because I had to put my van there one time because I lost a bunch of pipes off the roof.
But I told her again, and she said, "Lord have mercy." She said, "Thank you for calling. We'll
You
send
surprised the
somebody out."
911 lady.
I did.
That's hard to do, man. They'd be
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, we got you. Yeah,
Remember
we're going
Denise?
there to get the jacking off guy.
Deneen from Silver Spoon, the waitress.
Yeah.
So one evening, Deneen, a young woman who waited tables at Silver Spoon at the Landing, came in and she was flustered. You know, like, Deneen, what's going on? She's like, give me beer. You know, and she wasn't a big drinker, and she drank 2 beers in front of me, and I'm like,
Wow.
what's happening? And she said, well, I got off work and I went to the parking lot, and it was the public parking across from the Landing. And when I went in and made the left towards my car, way down at the other end of the parking lot was a naked man jacking off.
Mm.
And I said, ooh. And she said, I started running to my car. He started running towards me. She won the race, got in the car, locked the door. The guy got on the hood and jerked off on her windshield, right? And I'm like, and so I called the police, you know, and they're like, well, you want somebody to come down? I'm like, well, if you see a naked black dude jerking off, that's probably the one who just did it to my
there's
friend.
probably not two of them down
You
there.
know? And-
Not now. I mean, not same
And-
time.
Same time, same place.
And she laughed, you know, and the police came up and talked to Deneen, and you know, but it's pretty terrifying, you know, just for her. You know,
I bet
of
it.
course.
I mean, you know, it
You
probably
know,
sticks with her.
You just
When she's walking through a parking lot. Every time
Right.
she's like, is
How
it going
could
to
it
happen
not?
again? What
Yeah.
is going to happen?
Yeah.
And other people pay for that.
Yes. Right. Right. Exactly.
I have never had anybody come on my windshield from the outside.
Rule 34.
Always the inside out. So who's next? Who's next on the hit list to get their interview?
Oh, jeez, I have no idea. I've been gone 8 years.
I would say Fred Andrews, but rest
Fred
in
Andrews.
peace. You know. Yeah.
Living. We can't do
I don't think he wouldn't have been suitable for film.
But you could tell a story about someone, anybody can tell a story about someone who's crossed over, and it will go on their page. So what JaxPunx is basically my best effort to collect the stories of from people that were around and put them onto a website and, you know, put them on YouTube. And just for anybody who gives a shit, I don't know who's going to care, but like, I care at the moment. And so, but anyway, so you can tell a story about somebody that's crossed over, and then that can go up onto their page. Also, like whatever flyers, I know you guys got the Facebook thing, and that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
But like Facebook, we don't own it, and they could go away at any time. So like, I'm trying to kind of archive for us. It's going on my server right now, and
I just bought a fear poster that I had made back in 1990, and it's, you know, the fist with
That was a
fear,
great poster.
right? And somebody had one here in Jax, and you're welcome to you know, you can't have it, but
yeah, but just a
everybody-
photo is good. A photo is good.
okay.
Yeah, just send me
Gotcha.
take a photo of your flyers and whatever and send it in.
I've downloaded all of those flyers to my phone. You know,
Cool.
so I will forward them to you.
Yeah, we want
You
to
know,
your page.
because it's some of those little bills. There are a couple that you just go down and go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you know, look who it is. I would.
So I got a good Larry and Fred Andrews story. This
Okay.
is probably 6 months into
oh,
where
this
Fred.
This is such a great story.
So Larry comes back to the office and is like, Ed, you probably want to stay away from Fred tonight. And I'm like, wow, what's going on with him? He's like, well, he's really drunk, and he's in a really good mood. But he came up and gave me a big bear hug and picked me up off the ground. But my arms were pinned by my side, and he put his tongue in my mouth, and it made me really uncomfortable.
Well, you didn't do it in a good way, huh?
Do those sound like my words? Yeah. God damn it, Ed! Fred fucking kissed me. I had to headbutt him.
Yeah.
You know? I mean,
Yeah.
but he had me, man. I was like, oh, here it comes.
Oh, no.
Let go of me. Bam, 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 bam. The fuck off me, man.
I will heed your advice, Larry.
Yeah, I'm sure that was an 8-ball response. You know, Fred had just, gone through an 8-ball and was feeling really, really frisky.
He was loose.
He's a big man, strong.
Especially coked up, huh?
Right.
I got one more question. Who was your favorite all-time Jacksonville punk band? Whether it's show, sound, whatever you want to say.
Mad Love. And Cleve was the singer, and they were brief in the early 80s, probably like 81, 82. And Ed Cotton was in the band also, and Cleve left. He did a movie. The band was amazing. They were definitely gender bending a little bit,
Okay.
and used to play at Metropolis a lot.
Okay. Wow.
And he left Jacksonville. Him and his brother made a giant Godzilla costume that was like 15 feet high, that you could walk in it and move in it. And he ended up, he did one movie, and then he did another movie. The second movie he did that he used this costume in was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And he's the Godzilla in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Holy shit.
And he ended up moving to LA and had a long and storied career as a Hollywood makeup artist. And he had a reality show called Monster Man that Cleve just passed away a couple years ago. And rest in peace.
He's on
But
the
he was
list,
in
man. We gotta
he
find
was
him.
one of the most interesting people I've ever met. Super smart, super charismatic, and
Very good showman, huh?
great showman. His band kind of sucked, but they were great to go see. I mean, they were great.
They were a spectacle.
great. Oh, they were a spectacle.
Yeah,
And,
that's what you want to see in a
they
punk
were-
show, man.
They were
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And he was Mr. Charisma, and yeah, he ended up having a long, successful career in Hollywood as a
That's awesome.
makeup artist and creating monsters and all kinds of chaos. and
Sounds
stuff.
talented to build a 15-foot walkable,
Yeah.
manable.
Oh yeah.
Godzilla.
Godzilla. Him and his brother made it.
That's
It's
awesome.
incredible.
Yeah.
No
And
wonder he got picked.
another Jacksonville connection for that movie, Alice Nunn, who played Large Marge.
Wow.
She's from Jacksonville, and she's
What?
buried in Old City Cemetery.
No way.
Yeah. So 2 people in that movie in Pee-wee's Big Adventure were
Large
from
Marge.
Florida. Tell them Large Marge sent ya.
So for me, I moved back down in '83, and coming back to my hometown, and somebody had a Stiletto cassette tape. I was working at Bennigan's, and they're playing it in the back, and of course I'm, all right, and then someone was like, you guys want to go see them, and I'm like, who is this? I had no idea. And yeah, so it was Stevie Stiletto. So that for me was kind of my intro to, I thought if Jacksonville could produce this kind of punk, I'm home, because it's kind of what I learned up north, and I'm like, oh man, this is fantastic. And, so the credit goes there, Ray and Tommy Berlin and then I'd have to say 101 Damnations. I don't know if that would be exactly punk, but my
Punkin' attitude
Yes,
is
and-
punk for me.
exactly,
They had that.
exactly, and
Yeah.
and I mean just a great show every single time, and really good music, you know. And I always thought that they would be it. They would be the band that, you know, made it from Jax. You know?
Steve Peppers is still
Instead of
around.
the
He
other
lives
part.
up in Carolina.
Yeah, Steve is just he's so cool, and he's still doing, you know, he's still doing this stuff, you know, and he'd be one that would, you know, if he's ever in Jax, it'd be a good person to interview.
Well, we can catch him. We can get him as you do a video.
On Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding. That's a
Yeah, we
great
can do a
idea.
Zoom with him. Brenda did one with a guy in L.A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From
Mike
Ray's,
Butler.
From Ray's band.
Oh, really?
Michael
So-
Butler.
Yeah.
He's playing with Handsome Dick Manitoba.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And he has a podcast, and he I just got his interview recently, and he told me that he has like an award for having the longest running music podcast in the world.
Yeah. He's been doing his podcast for years and years and years.
So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get some good pointers
Yeah.
for this.
Uh,
That's what
Mike Williams and
Ringworm.
I do.
yeah, and
Yeah.
from the Creeps,
Oh, you're talking about Dan?
Pat Lally.
Pat Lally.
Ah!
Yeah, you know, Pat.
Joey.
I
Did
was.
you do Danny yet?
We've done Danny.
We did Danny.
We did Tommy Berlin.
Oh, cool.
Tommy
I
was
was-
the first.
Yeah.
We haven't got Pat yet. Pat just says, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it," and then it never happens.
In the upstairs of Metropolis,
Right, too.
I was making out with a hot girl, right? And Pat had just finished playing, and Pat walks in, and he sees her, and he goes, "Hey, I'm in the band." Right? And it was just so funny, and I said, he is in the band, you know, and
She's like,
yeah, it was just it was
what does this
so
mean?
it was so earnest, you know.
Usually that works.
I love Pat, man. He's a good guy.
Did it work for him?
No, not.
Yeah, but you're the bass player. Man.
Yeah.
You're right behind the drummer there, you know. Fucking priority
That's
list.
how that works.
So one show I remember that I got to be in was called The Female Show, and it had Lydia Lunch as the headliner.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was awesome because I appreciated you guys holding space for female artists in town.
Yeah, we
Which
did
I was.
Lydia Lunch, we did Xena, we did Mo Tucker from Velvet Underground.
Was that an afternoon, like a daytime show?
It seems like it started early, yeah.
Earlier, yeah.
Early evening.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I have the flyer.
Oh, sweet. They kind of run together, but that was it. Oh, what's her name? The young woman who had the child with spina bifida. Remember we did that. You know,
I don't remember.
because it was all around the same time. You know.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you this, and I mean it when I say this. This has been one of the most fun interviews that I've done.
Oh,
It really is. I mean, you guys,
had a blast.
it's been just there was no trying to wrench shit out of you or something. You know? You're like, whoa.
what's funny is we didn't even tell all the good stories.
Oh, God. Holy shit.
This
man,
is
how
the,
long were you
this is the
open?
PG
Yeah,
version
you know,
too.
like this is just
Yeah.
what's popping into our heads.
How long was the Milk Bar open?
The whole 90s. And Metropolis opened up in April '88, so, you know.
And this is how it is whenever we.
Whenever he and I get together,
Because-
it's just, we'll remember something funny that we hadn't thought
Awkward.
about in 30 years. It'll pop in our head and we'll get a good laugh out of it. Or he remembers things that I don't remember. Usually if I remember something, he has something to add to it, you know.
I had a real hazy time.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know.
I wasn't clicking on all cylinders, man.
I did too.
Everything was kind of gray. Yeah.
Well,
Well, we always remembered you coming in with whatever you had going on, with a big smile on your face
yeah.
from day one.
yep.
You go, hey Ed, hey Larry, hey man, I got blah, 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 and every time we're like, whatever you want to do, Rob.
Come on.
Come on.
It's the same vibe as Bobby.
Yeah, it'd be either we already have a band book as opener for that, or of course you can do it, or you got your own night you want to do. Let's pull out the calendar and let's figure out what to do. Of course, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
So I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
I wanted to know about I wanted you to talk about how you promoted back then, and did you share leads with Einstein and Go-Go's, or was there any collaboration?
We didn't do any collaboration, and that was not our choice.
Okay.
Yeah, and
they when we opened up, they would tell bands that they couldn't play at Einstein anymore if they played at Metropolis.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that didn't last very long because everybody played. They're like, why not? And we were like, we don't care.
What you dicks, man.
You know. I get along fine with those girls. We're great now. But yeah, there was a little. Felt like they owned the town a little bit, and that didn't last very long though because everybody played at Metropolis and would play out there, and but yeah, promoting shows. Flyers, posters on telephone poles. I don't know how
Folio
many
magazine.
Word of mouth.
Folio magazine. Folio would not preview any of our bands, and I'm like, because they would preview all these other shows. This is at Metropolis, and I'm like, well, why not? And they said, we were trying to get Folio in Milk Bar or Metropolis. Can you deliver the magazine to Metropolis? And they said, no, we can't do that. And I'm like, why not? And they said, well, because your crowd isn't our target audience. And so I said, well, that's funny because the last 4 out of the last 5 issues that you've had, a band that was playing at Metropolis was best of the best. Go see this show. So you're telling your customer, your readers, to come to Metropolis.
Yeah, your target audience.
But you won't deliver the magazines to put them in our bar because we're not your target audience. It doesn't really make any sense. And we were advertising at the time, and I said, I don't think we're going to cancel our advertising with you guys. You won't deliver magazines to us. And the very next day, Sam, the owner from Folio, comes in with a giant stack of magazines, came in, set them up, and he said, if you guys ever run out, here's my direct line, call me, and I'll make sure it gets done. It's like, you guys are absolutely our target market. We're so happy you're down here.
Yeah, we don't know who
the fuck
you were talking to.
We don't know who the idiot you were talking to on the phone, but
it really wasn't surprising, because the pushback that we got basically every step of the way was impressive. You have to understand at the time, I was 24, you were 26, and here we are in our cut-off sweatpants and our Chinese shoe, those little slaps, and we're running a business, and people from the police department, the city,
the fire department,
the fire department, the church, everybody pushed back.
Oh yeah, what did you get? What kind of pressure?
Wanted to have nothing downtown.
Well, so what happened is we became successful in downtown at night. Okay, as far as the police and the fire department and all that goes, and it required a police presence when you have a lot of people. Okay, there's late night, there's a risk that shit's going to go down. Windows would get broken on occasion. People would get robbed with finger guns,
car break-ins,
that kind of stuff, right? And I mean, it wasn't until we hired the police at Milk Bar that abated. And even with the city,
they wanted a kickback.
When I we filled out the paperwork for our occupational license, right? And I was smart enough to have Xeroxed the application, and we sent it off, and we were approved. We got our occupational license, and instead of it saying 128 West Adams, it said 126. It was a typo, okay? And the way the law had worked at that time, we got our license immediately before we were grandfathered in to the 1,000-foot distance away from a church. So it had been 500 feet. If you're within 500 feet of a church, you can't open a bar, okay? And then they changed it to 1,000 feet. Well, we got our application in time. We got the license. Well, by the time I got the license, it was after that date. I had to go down to Claude Bagwell's office and show them that a mistake had been made. And Claude Bagwell's secretary didn't want to do it. Claude came out, right? And he's like, "Well, Mr. Vosmik, are you going to sell milk?" And I said, "Sell milk?" "Yes, sir, we sure are." Because he went, "It's the milk bar. You're selling milk?" And I said, "Yes." And he signed off on it. And that is literally how close Milk Bar came to not opening. Just a transposition error on their part, and I had it clear as day right in front of them. And interestingly enough, the secretary, I look over at her desk, and there's a picture of Cooper White, J.C. White. And it was this policeman who had crooked cop, yeah, big time crooked cop who had been put on desk duty as a result of doing some really nasty shit.
That was her husband.
And that was her son.
Well, they had a drug task force downtown, and they were stalking us, and they did some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And how that drug task force ended was all these crackheads were getting arrested and ended up in jail, and the public defender would come see them, and they'd hear the same story over and over. It's like, "Look, I'm a crackhead, I admit it, I've been arrested a dozen times, but this time I did not have any crack on me." He's like, "I just got out of jail the day before, I didn't have any money, I had no crack.
I had nowhere to get it. I was looking.
And then you hear the same story over and over and over. So internal affairs all corralled this drug task force, like a dozen of them, and searched their persons and their vehicles, and it was like 12 out of 14 of them, something like that, had crack on their persons or in their vehicles at the beginning of their shift.
For plants.
They called them all in with no notice.
And some of those guys got fired, some of them resigned, but a bunch of them stayed on the force, and one guy ended up being the head of the SWAT team years later. But it made the front page of the Times-Union one day, and then that was it. You never heard another word about it.
They released several hundred. Basically,
I think it was like 900 people that were in jail or in prison.
Anybody who got arrested by
them, they let
legitimately or otherwise, were
with the
just
records
exonerated.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, Metropolis, Ed's reading his newspaper. I credit Ed Wilson for teaching me to read a newspaper. But he was reading the newspaper, and I hear him go, "What?" And I'm looking at him, and he goes, "That's fucked up." And he's making the Ed face, reading, and then finally he goes, "Larry, read this." And he had the paper folded, and there's a picture of this guy with a shiner, and I mean a beautiful shiner, just like Norman Rockwell faking, right? And he was the manager of on Bay Meadows restaurant called Finn's on Bay Meadows Road. And what happened was he it was like 7 or 8 off-duty police officers come in, right? And they had been fishing, and they were drunk, and they got thrown out. and the manager's trying to get the policeman out. Well, they started fighting. They started beating up the manager. Clearly beat him up, right? And then, you know, the crowd from inside there started protecting the manager. That's when the sergeant discharged his firearm drunk to disperse the crowd, right?
Inside the building?
No, this is outside in the parking lot, okay?
Either way, it's still better.
Right.
Okay.
So he goes, Ed goes, do any of these names look familiar? And I look, and I said, J.C. White. Because 2 months earlier, that man had come into Metropolis. He had a cigar in his hand, right? He had a green cop with him in a green uniform training, right? Mm-hmm. Walks in, puts his cigar out on our bar. They're brand new. We had literally installed it that week, the green Formica top. Put his cigar out. I hit it back at him, and I said, "What the fuck are you doing, cop?" And he goes, "You want to go to jail?" And Ed comes out from the back, and I said, "I want you to use a fucking ashtray," because it was, you know, we had pin spots on our glass ashtrays. And Ed comes out and he's like, "What's going on?" And finally, J.C. White said, "You know, you have people in here who are under the age of 21. And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, that's illegal." And I kept under the cash register the codes from the DABT, the Division of Alcoholic Beverages and Tobacco, that they had given us with our 2 COP, and it showed that we were able to serve, or people could come in 18 and older.
Yeah, just can't drink.
They just can't drink. And now this was new ground in Jacksonville, right? And we had a band playing. We had, you know, it was a Saturday night. We had quite a few people in the club. And ultimately, Ed walks out, and what happened?
Well, I remember the
code book.
Yeah, the first time he came in, he was like, "What are you doing here? You're shutting this place down. Get everybody out, close the doors." We're like, "What are you talking about? You can't be here." I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, you need to get out of here, close this place down now. And I'm like, "I got a beverage license. I've got a lease. What are you talking about?" He's like, "I'm telling you, you have." I'm like, "No, we're not going anywhere.
You're going to have something a little better than that.
Yeah.
The best was, "I need to talk to the owner."
Oh, yeah.
He said, "I'm the owner." You know, bullshit. Let me talk to the owner. You know, and I mean, we heard that a jillion times.
Because you were young?
Yeah, and dressed in a manner that was unfamiliar to the dude. So what happened the night that the band was playing, he was trying to find the code that said you had to be over 21 to be inside. Couldn't find it, and finally just threatened both of us, and "You guys would go to jail if I come back and there's anybody under the age of 21, right?" And, you know, we put our heads together and we refunded money that night. Anybody under the age of 21 had to go. Minefield was playing that night.
Oh, boy.
Night. Yeah, you know. And, you know, come Monday, I called my lawyer. I played rugby, you know, at the time. Jeff Morrow, rest in peace. Jeff Morrow, who knew everybody, by Tuesday, he had to come. He walked in. J.C. White walked in and apologized to me and Ed. And I'm like, "What's going on here?" And all I said to him was, "Dude, we're good. The only thing that really upset me is that you put your cigar out on my bar." You know, and I said, "You are going out of your way." And he turned and walked out the door. You know, didn't apologize for, you know, for that. And so when all of it came down with the occupational license, and I see that it says "Mom" I'm talking to, who ultimately is making the decision, I'm like, oh my gosh, Jacksonville is still a tiny, tiny town. You know, and how we didn't get arrested with crack, you know, by these guys.
Didn't get it planted on you.
Because he became a part of the Zone 3 task force, and they could arbitrarily go.
They come in with masks and search everybody and stuff like that. They do
I was
that
standing in
times.
Milk Bar one time, and I don't remember what show it was, but I guess I looked like I was high or something, because this guy comes up to me and he goes, "Hey man," he you having a pretty good time tonight? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like trying to make my friend, be friends. And he goes, man, where can I get some of the stuff you're on? And I'm like, I'm not on anything.
Right? Was he wearing a Hawaiian shirt and have a big bulge?
I'm on the
shirt.
beer.
Did he really? Are
Yeah.
you serious?
He had a Hawaiian
Rob,
shirt.
Did you hear that? Oh my god!
I don't know about a big bulge, but he had a Hawaiian shirt. And he was
Oh
like,
my
come on,
God.
man, tell me, come on, tell
They
me.
were
I'm like,
so stupid.
I don't know what in the hell you're talking about, man. Please, I don't know you. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So
You know?
Brenda, they would send their undercover guys, right? First, they all had mustaches. Right? They all had mustaches.
In the late 80s, early
Right.
90s.
And the way they fit in was to put a Hawaiian, and I'm not kidding, because
He had a Hawaiian shirt. It was yellow.
He walked up to me, and he goes, "Hey, do you know where I can get any XTC?"
Oh no.
Right?
Ah!
And I
You're
looked
talking
at
about the
him.
band, right?
Skylarking is a great album. You have good taste in music.
I looked at him and I said, "What the fuck do you want, cop?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm not a police officer." I'm like, "Oh my god, oh my god, get away from
You're
me!"
hilarious.
He's wearing black shoes.
And you're a bad actor.
Right? Any XTC, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "Corey, look at the cop." Corey Fox, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was these guys, and they did it for a long time, and finally Sergeant Leaptrot got that all under control.
Yeah.
He had enough clout, because we were straight and narrow. I mean, all we did
Oh,
was
yeah,
drink.
you guys are right. Yeah.
Well, we had one time we had these two cops came in the bar, and I'm like, "Look, Larry, cops," because they
They
were
were wearing the uniform,
obviously-
except not the uniform.
obviously dorky cops with the black shoes, with the looking like right out of the '70s, and they came up and asked for he and I by name, and we're all like,
Is that Metropolis?
"What do you guys want?" And they're like, "We're homicide detectives from Miami, and do you know Philip Watson?" And we're like, "Philip Watson, Phil." You're like, "Yeah, we know Phil."
The quantum
And
douchebag.
they're like, "Well, you need to tell us everything you know about him." We're like, "No, I'm not going to tell you anything about him unless you tell." Well, I said,
Yeah,
"Tell
what's
me
it about?"
what's it about." We're like, "We can't tell you, but you need to tell us everything." We're not like, unless you tell us what it's about, we're not telling you shit.
Yeah.
So they said, "Well, he is in Dade County Jail under arrest for the rape and murder of a grandmother and a baby." We're like,
9 months.
"What do you want to know, officer?" And
I don't know anything about that. I can tell
but
you that.
this kid was the.
You did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the first person in the bar at Metropolis when we opened, and the last person to leave at the end of the night for probably a year.
Yeah.
And he's still in prison.
He rented some loft space the next street up, and
Phil.
Phil.
Yes, Phil.
That was our first show. Was
Yeah.
it Phil's Warehouse?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
In fact, you'll remember this because I'm sure it's the night it happened.
It was an old gym.
I started seeing red Solo cups coming into Metropolis, and I'm like, where the fuck are these cups? And there's a party over here, and I walk over, and the police had shown up, right?
They
And
probably shut us down.
it got shut down, and Phil walks up and he says,
Well, they asked who's responsible for this.
"Yeah, no, yes,
Yeah.
and he said, and I quote,
Yeah.
'It is I.'"
It is I.
Not it's me. It is I, Phil Watson. I am responsible for contributing to the delinquency of minors. I serve them all alcohol.
Wow.
And they arrested
He's
Phil.
a genius.
They arrested him. Okay, so we're getting the story from Miami, and the policeman said that the grandfather had gone out to the store. Phil did the horrors while the grandfather was gone, left the house, and this is the cop saying it, went to a payphone and said,
Called 911.
called 911 and said, "It is I, Phil Watson. I murdered so-and-so at this address," and hung up. And when the policeman said that, Ed was like, "Larry," and I told
That was him,
I
yeah.
told that story, and of course
it was
taking
the
notes.
exact quote.
The exact. I
So
mean,
It was
Word
almost
for
like he had a
word.
split
Word
personality,
for
and he
word.
had to tell him what the other one did.
he 2 times in that 18 months that,
We
I
played that.
knew
We were
him.
playing that show with the Creeps.
Yep, and when it got broken up by the police,
Yes.
and Phil went to jail. I saw Phil. Phil was an acute misogynist. I mean, like a violent misogynist. And I remember one time Elise, he was talking to Elise, and then he goes, "Fuck you, bitch." And he's doing his hand like this and little Elise Barquette's face. And Dave Stavish did a straight punch and hit Phil in the chest, and he slid down the wall.
Yeah, he wasn't a big guy.
No, and then there was one other incident with a woman inside the bar. I saw it twice in him, and it was a real departure from his
Yeah,
personality.
it was almost like he had 2 personalities.
Yeah, but both times it was with women, and then he disappeared. Now, he was the one. I went to.
I punched Phil in the face once.
Did you? You punched
saw,
Phil?
You saw that. You were there. He was like put up his dukes and he's
Oh,
like
yeah,
he's like, Ed,
yeah.
I'm a gold gloves
Yeah.
boxer. Let's box.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, Phil, I'm not gonna box. So he's like, come on, Ed. So he starts throwing punches. So I just threw a little hooky jab, but I hit him square on the chin, and he just dropped.
Yep. Oh my god.
Ah. Okay, so I have more questions about
Oh, so promotion. The other thing I wanted to say was we did Rock 105 for this minute. There was this great DJ and producer over there who we worked with. Now, do you remember the great quote was, we had all these sound bites that we wanted
Oh.
in, and he's like, yeah, it's cool as long as it's not,
Any hard rap music,
yeah,
like
like Public Enemy. And we were literally sampling Public Enemy.
Oh, shit.
I used Hazy Shade of Criminal as the music bed for the ad.
But
He just had to say the wrong words,
And-
didn't he?
I take that by request. If you tell me you can't use any Public Enemy, then I'm going to use Public Enemy.
the
Okay.
homemade radio commercials were decent.
They were good.
It
the
got
Planet,
the word
Planet
out.
Radio ones were amazing.
Yeah, and then Planet Radio.
That's
was,
how Kirby
was later.
got his start, DJ.
Yeah.
It was because he could do voices. He'd come in to cut commercials,
with
and then they're like, "Hey, are you available from this?"
no
You know?
kidding. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Because I always wanted to have our voices on the radio instead of now at Milk Bar
Right, exactly.
Friday night. You know?
Ah!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
wouldn't do. I couldn't do that.
Car commercials, basically.
It would sound like a car commercial. Yeah.
But we spent, the flyering, and we would flyer San Marco and Riverside super duper hard, and we'd have to dodge, they weren't called Karens back then, but, we had a couple roll up on us in a Mercedes. Take that down now, shut up or I'll staple one to your car. Oh shit.
Ah!
Yeah. But that's, and very rarely we would do, print, any kind of print ads.
Folio was. fairly
Folio was,
regular. That was about it.
we would call in and give them an update for the upcoming bands, and that's all we had to do, and then if somebody, Katrin was down there. In fact, Katrin is somebody who is worth talking to for sure. Katrin is
Awesome.
a music aficionado, I would say. She was always
How do
in
we
the
get hold
scene.
of
I will do it through Facebook. She's
Okay.
on Facebook. I'm pretty sure she's still here in Mandarin.
Cool.
And but every quality show that we ever did, Katrin was there. And she worked at Folio, and she was involved with the music
Awesome.
part of Folio. And she's a great person.
Super.
Okay.
I'd love to interview her. And so, one thing that the website is going to have very soon, I'm almost done, but basically it has a community section, and that's basically so that you can upload your own stuff, and it kind of stops being a bottleneck on me right now as far as publishing stuff goes. So I'm excited about that. But I wanted to ask you guys about, we talked about punk, but what about the hardcore bands that played at the Milk Bar? Do you have any memories for that?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Like what? Who would you consider hardcore and not punk?
Agnostic Front, Madball.
Yeah,
Sick
we
of
did
It All.
tons of shows.
Sick of It All.
Sick of
we
It All. New York
Version of
Hardcore.
Conformity,
Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law, lots of shows with them.
So
DRI would be.
DRI, lots of
DRI, we
shows with
did.
DRI.
one of
NBC.
my all-time favorites. Ed made me leave the office because he would do the Milk Bar outgoing message on our answer machine,
Oh Lord.
and Sick of It All was playing, and Ed would go through the initial blurb and then start listing off the bands, and he said Sick of It All, and I'm like, no, Ed, that's not what it. And he's like, oh shit, right. And by the fourth or fifth time, of course, I've got tears, because poor Ed can't get it.
It was like 10
out.
takes, and I was still fucking it out.
Okay.
And I could do those things, man. I run them off.
Bang them out.
Bang them out. Like maybe
You got a mental
one,
block.
2 takes, I could do it. I
Sick
could
of
not
all.
say sick of it all. And if I
You
tried
had
to
a
slow it
mental
down like that, then I'd run out of time.
Out of time
at the end.
And finally he goes, Larry, just leave, right? And I left, and it was a long time before he came out of the office, and he goes, I got it.
I'm like, he was laughing, he wouldn't stop laughing. Then he's looking at me
Right.
with his face,
Yeah, now
his
he's
cheeks
fucking
are all
yelling.
red. I'm like, fucking,
Go.
if we're leaving, you got to walk out, man, because otherwise it's not.
Right, we're going to be here till morning.
Okay, talk about the Milk Bar t-shirts, because I think I still have one. We had the yellow sign.
Rob Deep,
DiPiazza.
yeah, did our, the actual Clockwork Orange screen for us, and the goofy bubble letters, and I think he screened all of our yellow Droog shirts.
Yep.
as well, and we just took that image from a sign and put Droog on it, and but the Metropolis shirts were next level. Robert
McMillan.
Yeah,
McMullen.
Robert McMillan, yeah.
He
R.I.P.
just passed away.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yes,
He
R.I.P.
died
Just
a couple months ago.
fucking last year.
Oh my God.
Sucks.
Yeah.
His life celebrations should be soon, hopefully.
And Jim. And Jim
Kind.
passed away a long time ago.
Robert was just a kind soul. He did one shirt, and I have a medium that I plan on fitting into sometime soon. But
His style.
Right, exactly. He drew an album, an LP, and it's.
I
all-
have one of those, yeah.
It's all hand, and you can see the spirals. It's all one. One
line, yeah.
Yeah, and
That was my favorite shirt
and
out of all of them.
on the label, is Metropolis, 43 West Monroe Street, Jacksonville, Florida. And they were absolutely stunning. And all of his shirts that he made for us were.
Brenda's got a
Yeah.
painting in the kitchen.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He was
She
one
just
of my
gave
favorite
away one
friends.
to Ace, right? Or not Ace, Ace's brother.
Oh, yeah. So that was another R.I.P. Joseph Hodge.
Yep.
They were besties, and Robert did a painting of Joseph Hodge playing keyboard. That was
But
amazing.
it was,
I know
it
what
was
you're
really
talking about.
3D. It was super 3D. It was really awesome. She gave it to his son.
We had,
Yeah.
we had one of the public access shows. I don't know if it was Willie Idol or something like that, but they were filming bands at Metropolis. And
Crawfish
of
of Love.
Joey was playing keyboards, and the camera would pan, and when it would get to Joey,
And he always wore those long sleeves, and
Yes.
one hand was flying, and his hips were.
But he would
Just
just be
wait till
playing-
the camera got
he
to
would
it.
be playing just like this until the camera. Then you see the camera come. Then you start.
Yeah.
And then the camera would pan away, and he'd go back to
Yeah, don't,
Yeah.
finger here, finger here, finger here.
Joey came over to my house when I first bought it and presented me with this picture of me and Mona drinking. It was Halloween. Joey had brought he brought everything and just to take a picture. He wanted a picture of us drinking off of a foggy cup, and he framed it for me and brought it to me, and I was just like, oh my God, Joey,
Yeah.
thanks. And it was shortly after that he passed, and it's
Yeah. He was awesome.
Was he wearing the hat with the ears on it?
Yeah.
yes. He was
His son came to visit us. He lives in New York, and Brenda gave the picture of his.
Yeah, he's friends with
Noah?
With Noah.
Yeah, what's his
It's not Ace. It's
Blaze.
Blaze. Okay.
I have a picture of me and Blaze.
Yeah, Ace is here. He still lives here.
Ace is here, yeah. Blaze is in New York.
Blaze has been in New York for a long time.
But they're like my little nephews.
That's
I have a
nice.
picture of me and Blaze on the beach when Blaze is like a year old.
Oh, awesome.
He has the best van.
Yeah, he's got a snub
It's a
nose.
freaking 1960 something Ford or a Chevy. I don't know. It's just totally flat front. I mean, your legs are sitting
Right.
under the hood.
Right.
And it's just badass. And it's got what the fuck was the name of the band? It's
Engraved.
the windows are all etched.
Oh.
They've all been etched by somebody. There was like a super custom van at one point in time, but it's old now. But it's like Nazareth or
Blaze.
something.
Ah.
It's like Hair of the Dog or something.
That's awesome.
That's
Me
pretty
and
cool.
Blaze.
Wow, look at him.
And then me and Blaze.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
was Blaze in Jacksonville until like
Cool.
7 years ago or 6 years ago?
How long's he been in New York?
I was in LA.
4 years ago.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's been about
Good
6 years.
The other one.
It's been
He had just gone to art school in New York, and Joey passed
Long
right
Beach.
after that.
oh my gosh.
Not too long after that. It's been about 6 years, 6 or 7.
Because I think did he lived over in Murray Hill, kind of near Edgewood Avenue in the shops. Back if you're going down Edgewood towards Paxson, on the left-hand side, I guess that would be the south side of Edgewood Avenue.
Yeah.
I think I ran into him over there.
JaxPunx!